All right, my friends, it took quite a bit, but we finally got through all the setup of Flutter on our local machine, and we've also generated our first starting project. We're going to dive into that first project in just a moment, but before we do, I want to have a quick discussion and give you a better idea of exactly how we work with Flutter. In other words, when we write Flutter applications, what are we doing all day? All right, so a couple items here. So in order to make a Flutter application, you and I are going to spend a lot of time building something called widgets. We create widgets to represent elements that are displayed on the screen of our mobile device. A widget is just a fancy term for a Dart class that represents something that's going to show up on the screen. So all the knowledge that we've just acquired about Dart classes and methods and instance variables are all 100% applicable to what we're going to be doing with Flutter. In order to build complex applications, you and I are going to spend a lot of time developing reusable widgets, or in other words, widgets that can be used several times throughout one given application or even shared with other apps that we might develop. Some of the widgets that you and I are going to use are provided to us for free by Flutter. So a lot of very basic widgets like, say, displaying a piece of text or showing an image or showing a button are all included out of the box with Flutter. But there's going to be other sets of widgets or other types of widgets that you and I are going to want to customize a little bit. So some widgets are going to be provided by Flutter, some are going to be created by you and me. Okay, so at this point I've been using the term widget quite a bit, and you're probably a little bit curious about, well, what exactly is a widget? Let's take a look at a very practical example of how we might design a widget and make use of some that are created by Flutter and make use of some that might be created by you and me. So I want you to take a look at this mock-up right here for maybe some type of, I don't know, to-do application. Inside this application, you can see a bottom navigation bar where we can kind of navigate between different screens. At the very top, we've got a header of sorts that says, hey, you're looking at all of your to-dos. And then maybe we've got a couple of buttons up here at the top as well that allows our user to filter through to-dos for all time, just today, and tomorrow. And then finally, maybe we've got some button on here as well that a user can press to add a new to-do. So if we were building this application with Flutter, we would try to write very little code. And in general, we tried to reuse as many widgets as we possibly can. So just about everything that you see on the screen right here can be built without you and I having to write a lot of custom code. Instead, we can make use of a lot of the widgets that are built into Flutter itself to build a UI like this. Let me show you exactly how. I'm going to open up the Flutter documentation at flutter.io, and I'm going to go to /widgets, which takes me to the official widgets catalog. So this is a list of all the default widgets that are included for us for free along with Flutter. You can certainly scroll through here and take a look at some of the different ones, but to build an application that looks like this right here, I might take a look at this material components section. And then inside of material components, I'll find the widget called scaffold. So the scaffold widget is a general layout widget. It gives us a lot of very common patterns that are used in a lot of material design applications. So we can take a look at the documentation here, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how the scaffold class works. But there's something much more in particular I want to show you here. I'm going to scroll down just a little bit, and I'm going to find the constructor section right here. So we know a lot about constructors now because we spoke about them in the deck application we put together, and we also spoke about those things called named parameters. So when we create a scaffold widget, we can pass in a ton of different named parameters. We can pass in a name parameter called, what you see right here, an app bar. We can pass in something called a floating action button, and we can also pass in something called a bottom navigation bar. So in order to build an application exactly like this right here, we might create a scaffold by calling its constructor, and then for the app bar component or the app bar parameter, for the floating action button parameter, and for the bottom navigation bar parameter, we will create and assign widgets. So we might do something like this right here. At the very top, we would create a new widget called an app bar. We could create a tab bar to represent these buttons. We could create a floating action button to represent this button right here, and a bottom navigation bar for the set of buttons at the bottom as well. We can create each of those, and then all we have to do is pass them in to this scaffold when we create it. The scaffold class, or the scaffold widget, will automatically take all those widgets we have provided and lay them out on the screen for us in this sort of layout. So this layout right here is what that scaffold class is meant to do for us automatically. All we got to do is create a new scaffold, we pass in some set of widgets that you and I create, and ta-da, they all get placed in the right spot on the screen automatically for us. So that's what you and I are going to spend a lot of time doing with Flutter. We're going to create sets of widgets of our own. We're going to look at a lot of documentation for some of these widgets that we get out of the box with Flutter, and we're going to figure out how we can leverage all of these built-in widgets to very quickly make our own customized application. Okay, so that's just a little bit of a preview of what we're going to be doing. So let's take a quick pause right here. We're going to continue the next section and talk about the first app that we're going to put together.